a closer look. And we welcome in Craig Gilbert. He is a fellow at the Marquette University Law School. He is also a longtime political writer for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. We always visit with him around election time because no one knows the Wisconsin electorate better than him. So, Craig, in all your years covering Wisconsin elections, why is this so different, do you think, from the norm in a spring Supreme Court election?
Yeah, so our court elections have been getting more political and more partisan, but what really jumps out about this one is it's been nationalized by Democrats and Republicans. I've never really seen that before. I mean, the degree to which Elon Musk and Donald Trump have been kind of at the center, not just of, the canvassing and the get out the vote messaging to both sides trying to gin up their base, but now even at the end of the campaign in the broadcast television advertisements. I never would have expected to see, for example, Brad Schimmel, ending his campaign with an explicit message about supporting Donald Trump and casting support for him as a vote for Donald Trump. So that's what is kind of jaw-dropping to me, of course, along with the just otherworldly level of spending in this race for a spring election.
Do you think this is a one-off with a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin because of the climate? We know, there are 5 more elections in the next 5 years for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, but will this remain an outlier in your opinion?
I don't know if it's a one-off. I don't think they're all going to be at the same pitch for a variety of reasons. For example, if liberals hold their majority in this race, conservatives aren't going to have another opportunity to take back the court until 2028, because the next 2 seats that are up are conservative seats. So that could take a little, air out of the next 2 races. Also, we're kind of in a unique moment early in the Trump presidency with all the kind of dramatic and audacious things that President Trump is doing. I think that's raised the temperature. I don't know if Elon Musk is going to play at the same level in every Wisconsin court race. So a lot of things have come together in this race.
Craig, let's talk about the electorate here. As I said, nobody knows it better. You study it, you always break it down after the election. So let's start, there's 2 parts here. Let's start with the first one. How has the electorate changed coming out of November versus going into November that makes this a different environment than it was 2 years ago for that race?
Yeah, so when you look at the November presidential race, I think the turnout was more than 75% of voting age adults in Wisconsin. In the last court race, which set a record for turnout in 2023, the turnout was about 40% of voting age adults. So it was a little more than half of the presidential level. Now, I think the turnout's going to be higher this time. I think instead of 1.8 million or 1.9 million, we could be looking at a turnout of 2 million voters, but that's still well below presidential level. It's still below the level of a fall midterm. One of the key questions here is that liberals have done very well in turning out Democratic voters in these court races. They've won 3 out of the last 4 by double digits. And so can conservatives and Republicans find a way to turn out more of their kind of sporadic Trump voters, people that are only voting in the fall and in some cases only voting in presidential cycles? I mean, that's the challenge that they're trying to address.
Is that the thing that you'll be looking for most when you start breaking down all the data that comes out of this election on Tuesday? Is that the area you're going to be looking at the most? Can the Trump name turn out voters when the Trump name is not on the ballot?
Yeah, I think one place to look for that is going to be in a lot of these smaller counties in the north and the west that Trump won by 20 or 25 points, but the conservative court candidate has only been winning by 5 or 10 points. And then, of course, Dane County always turns out at really high levels in spring elections. Milwaukee County is always kind of a wild card. It kind of usually doesn't perform at the same level in the spring as it does for Democrats in the fall. And even looking at, at the Green Bay area, Brown County, President Trump won Brown County by almost 8 points in 2024, but conservatives have been losing in those 3 recent elections where conservatives lost a court race statewide. They lost Brown County by anywhere from 3 to 10 points. So there's a big gap there. So I think it's going to be really telling in some of these places to see, whether that gap narrows or not.
Craig, how does this shape things for 2026? 2026 is going to be an important election year here in the state. We've got a governor's race. As you mentioned, it'll be a midterm, right? There'll be fall midterms. We have the second set of elections under these new state legislative maps. How does what people learn from this election, do you think, impact strategy for 2026?
Yeah, so one thing is the outcome of the election is relevant to
Sure.
2026 because we're living through endless wars over how to conduct elections, over who's eligible to vote, over the election process, over litigating elections after the fact. So it does matter what the makeup of the state's highest court is when it comes to those election disputes. But the other side of your question is really, what are both sides going to learn about how to mobilize their vote? Because 2026, again, won't be presidential turnout. It'll be something short of that. It'll be higher than this election, but it's still going to be an election where it's going to be really key, where turnout is going to play a huge role. And so both sides are going to, I think, take some lessons from how much success or not they had in this election, mobilizing their voters in a non-presidential year. In the case of Republicans, when President Trump is not on the ballot, he's not going to be on the ballot in 2026, can they still get their voters to vote? And on the Democratic side, how energized will Democratic voters be to turn out because of their unhappiness with the Trump presidency?
A lot riding on results tomorrow. Craig, thanks for breaking it all down for us. We look forward to visiting with you after you break down all the information after the election.
Absolutely.